Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the biggest shakeups in Western history, the Protestant Reformation. We're going to see how one German monk's crisis of faith managed to spark a century of fury that completely redrew the map of religion, politics, and even how we think about ourselves.
So let's set the scene. It's the early 1500s, and this is the kind of sales pitch you might hear across Europe. It's for something called an indulgence. And I mean, wow, talk about a manipulative fundraising tactic. It was designed to prey on people's deepest fears about what happens after you die. And believe me, it was about to light a massive fuse.
You see, this pitch wasn't the problem itself. It was a symptom of a much, much bigger issue. It was setting the stage for a spiritual and political earthquake that would rattle the entire continent. The Catholic Church, which had been the supreme authority for 1,000 years, was staring down a serious crisis of confidence.
At the time, the church was raising just incredible amounts of money for huge projects, like the brand new St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. And these indulgences, they were a huge part of the fundraising strategy. But to a lot of ordinary people, it looked an awful lot like the church was selling tickets to heaven, a practice that felt way more about greed than it was about God.
So, you've got this environment just simmering with discontent. It was the perfect breeding ground for a revolution, and its leader was the most unlikely of characters, a German monk named Martin Luther. Now, he wasn't trying to tear everything down and start a new church, not at all. He was just trying to fix the church he loved from what he saw as its deep-seated corruption.
Then on October 31st, 1517, Halloween of all days, Luther unleashes his 95 Theses. This was basically a list of 95 points, questions, and arguments challenging the church's ways, especially the whole business of selling indulgences. He wasn't just complaining, he was building a powerful theological case against the entire system.
And here is the absolute heart of the matter. It's this radical shift in thinking. The church taught that to get into heaven, you needed a mix of faith and good works. Charity, sacraments, and buying those indulgences. But Luther came along and said, nope. That's all wrong. He argued salvation isn't something you can earn or buy at all. It's a completely free gift from God, and it's given only to those who have faith.
His entire argument really rested on these three core ideas you see here: sola fide, by faith alone; sola gratia, by grace alone; and sola scriptura, by scripture alone. Now that last one, the idea that the Bible itself, not the Pope or the bishops, was the ultimate religious authority, that was an absolute game changer. And thanks to the brand new technology of the printing press, these revolutionary ideas spread across Europe like wildfire.
Now, as the Reformation started to spread, other thinkers took Luther's ideas and ran with them, sometimes in even more radical directions. So let's turn to John Calvin, because he introduced a concept that was both absolutely terrifying and incredibly influential.
Okay, brace yourself for this one. Calvin's most challenging idea was predestination. He argued that before the world was even created, God had already decided who was going to heaven, the elect, and who was going to hell, the reprobate. And this decision was based only on God's mysterious will, something humans could never ever understand. And get this, nothing you did in your entire life could change your faith.
So how on earth did Calvin defend an idea that seems so unfair? I mean, when people accused him of making God sound like a tyrant, he would often point to this analogy from the Bible. He basically argued, who are we, the clay, to question the design of the potter, our creator?
He really hit back at those accusations with a two-part argument. First, he said, God's will is justice, by its very definition, so it can't be unjust even if we don't get it. And second, he argued that since all of humanity is sinful to its core, every single one of us deserves to be damned anyway. So nobody is sent to hell unjustly. Instead, the lucky few who are saved receive an unbelievable act of mercy.
Right. So this, of course, led to a deeply personal and, frankly, terrifying question for anyone living in a Calvinist community, like the one he set up in Geneva. It must have created this constant, nagging anxiety. Am I one of the chosen ones, or am I doomed? Calvin's answer was that, well, you couldn't know for sure, but the elect, the chosen ones, could find some comfort by looking for signs. These weren't proof, mind you, more like clues. Things like a powerful inward feeling that you were called by God, a close personal relationship with Christ, living a really disciplined and godly life, and, interestingly, experiencing success and blessings in your daily life.
Now, these intense theological debates weren't just for scholars locked away in libraries. Oh no.
They ripped the very fabric of European society apart. They got tangled up with politics and power, and they fueled a century of unimaginable conflict.
You had princes and kings who saw the Reformation as the perfect opportunity. It was their chance to break free from the authority of the Pope and the Holy Roman Emperor. By splitting from Rome, they could seize enormous amounts of church land and money and basically become the absolute boss in their own newly forming nation-states.
And so what started as one monk's theological dispute spiraled into decades of political scheming and just devastating religious wars. From Germany to France and beyond, Catholics and Protestants began slaughtering each other in the name of God, leading to horrific events like the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre in France.
So by the year 1600, that unified Christian world of the Middle Ages, it was gone. Forever. Europe was now this fractured, messy patchwork of competing faiths, and that new reality would shape its politics and culture for hundreds of years to come.
The world we live in right now was profoundly shaped by the aftershocks of this religious revolution. Seriously, its legacy is huge and complex, and it touches everything from the books we read to the way our countries are run.
The Reformation didn't just leave behind a bunch of different churches, it laid the groundwork for so many modern ideas. That huge emphasis on everyone reading the Bible for themselves, it caused literacy rates to skyrocket. The challenge to the Pope's power helped strengthen secular kings and build modern nations. And maybe most importantly, that focus on a person's individual relationship with God planted the seeds for our modern ideas of conscience and liberty.
And it all leaves us with a question that echoes all the way from Calvin's 16th century Geneva right into our lives today. This old theological debate forces us to grapple with one of the biggest human questions there is. What's the real relationship between fate, faith, and our own free will?